Does your organization pride itself on exceptional customer service? Does it value both internal and external customer service? Do your workplace teams treat each other with the same level of courtesy and respect as they would an external customer? Let's take a closer look, coming up next. Hi everyone, Dennis Gilbert. We often learn at a very young age the values of traditional customer service. We may go to a retail store or to a restaurant with our parents, our family, our friends, or some other elder figure. And we're greeted at that restaurant or retail store with a smile and someone who cares about determining our needs and then acting quickly to meet or exceed our expectations. In today's environment and our workplace, many people know this traditional level of customer service, and they'll act with courtesy and respect as they interface with the external customer. What's important for us to consider is that we also have internal customers. And in today's segment, we're going to explore these traditional external customer service values as they relate to treating coworkers as customers. Let's dig a little bit deeper by exploring some fundamentals of customer service. So we're considering the idea of internal customer service, but very often those same principles, fundamentals, or values are appropriate for both internal and external customer service. So when we consider customer service, it's based on a very fundamental equation. So simple or so fundamental that sometimes we take it for granted. And that equation is this: what customers want compared with what customers actually get equals the customer's opinion of service quality. So the reason that I'm stressing this or highlighting this, even though it seems very simple, is that we sometimes forget this fundamental feature of customer service. We often believe that whatever we say we deliver on, or whatever our brand promise is, that is what our customer service is. That's what our level of customer service represents. We forget that that customer service experience is ultimately measured or valued by the customer, not by the person or organization delivering that good or that service. So let's consider a pretty simple or a pretty basic example. If I were to go through a drive-through restaurant, for example, the burger, hamburger, and French fries variety of drive-through restaurant, if I pulled up to one of those drive-throughs and ordered filet mignon, what's going to happen? What will I get? And of course, most of us would know right away that that menu item is not available. But assuming for a moment that I genuinely believed that that's something that I could receive from this drive-through restaurant, I would probably be very disappointed and very upset. And I may even try to argue about it or suggest that they should be providing that menu item. So this is an example to illustrate the point that the customer really dictates or suggests whether the service is good or bad. Of course, the people inside the restaurant who may be hearing me place this order are probably somewhat frustrated and probably think that I'm being completely ridiculous and would not understand why I would suggest or request such a ridiculous menu item? But it's these fundamentals that sometimes occur, the gap or the differences between the person delivering the service and the person receiving it, that makes our customer service experience so valuable. Now let's talk about the possible service interactions that we could have, the outcomes of those service interactions. There are really four that I want to mention. The first one is that we can receive a desired level of service. When we receive a desired level of service, what we want is what we get. The second is that we can receive an accepted level of service. In this case, what we get is what we'll take. The third may be that we have rejected service. In this scenario, you typically have a complaint. The fourth possible item is that we have exceptional levels of service. And exceptional levels of service is more than what we expect. It's something that is truly great. When we think about these interactions or these possible outcomes, they're typically based on what I like to refer to as a 6-step process, or 6 factors that may influence our ability to deliver exceptional customer service. The first factor is that customer service has to be delivered with a warm greeting. We have to be kind, caring. Perhaps it represents a greeting that's a handshake. We're smiling. Our body language is reflecting interest. It starts off with a warm greeting. The second is that we have to determine the needs of the customer. And in many cases, people believe that we simply ask, "What do you need today?" or "How can I help you today?" And of course, that may be valuable and that may be a good start. But what we'll explore in a few minutes will hopefully help set the stage for something deeper, more valuable, or richer than just asking, "What are your needs?" After we've determined what the needs are, we have to meet those needs. We need to be prompt, we need to be timely, often acting quickly to meet whatever those needs are. Today, time is always of the essence, so we have to be sure that we're appropriately springing into action to meet those needs. Once we've put in our effort to meet those needs, we have to be thinking about how will we make that moment memorable. That's really the fourth step in the process. Make the moment memorable. And we're going to talk a little bit more about making the moment memorable as well. The fifth step in the process is that we have to check the results. We have to determine, was this interaction helpful? Was it appropriate? Did it meet or fulfill all of the needs? Did it exceed those expectations? So we have to be sure that we're checking in. And the last step in the process is that we have to consider, how will we leave the door open? How will we leave this interaction as an invitation for more future interactions? So let's dig into these 6 steps or 6 factors a little bit deeper. So we already mentioned the idea of a warm, friendly greeting. So in face-to-face interactions, that may include a handshake. It should definitely include some eye contact, a smile, the gestures indicating that we're welcoming, we're warm, we're friendly, we're kind. And of course, as this segment is focusing on the internal customer, or how we treat coworkers as customers, this would include things like appropriate greetings at the start of a meeting, as we pass someone in the hall, as we're entering our workplace in the morning. So often we start to take our workplace relationships for granted. And we think that because we've worked with this person for days, weeks, months, years, that we don't have to treat them with that same warm, friendly greeting. But in order to establish a great working environment, one that values the teamwork and respects each other as well as the organization, it's important that we're greeting each other, with these same levels of courtesy and respect as we would an external customer. Sometimes I like to paint the picture of imagining an interaction where we're in a more retail type environment where we're actually interfacing face to face with the customer. When we see that customer, that recognized external customer, we greet them with a lot of courtesy and respect. But our coworkers, we don't often do that with. And so the coworkers may subconsciously take notes about this interaction. They notice how kind, friendly, and caring we can be. But once we're out of the view or the vision of that customer and we're back inside our workplace working together, then often we're less courteous, we're less respectful. And people, again, subconsciously sort of take notes on this. And they may not really recognize that they're doing it, but they're comparing their interactions with you one-on-one compared to those interactions that they see you performing with the external customer. And when we have cases like this, it's often suggested or said that this may represent a very tense communication climate, one that isn't embracing the idea of good courtesy and respect, good teamwork, and a united effort. So after we've provided this warm, friendly greeting, we next have to determine the needs. And in many cases, people believe that we can simply ask the question, what are your needs? Or how can I help you? Or what can I do for you today? Of course, those are all good thoughts, good ideas, and even good questions. But in reality, if we're really doing a great service to our customer, we have to dig a little bit deeper than that. So imagine if we think about Henry Ford, the famous automaker. Imagine if Henry Ford went to some of his initial customers and said, what are your needs? How can I help you? His customer base may have responded with, we need more horses, or we need stronger horses, or horses with better endurance, or we need better ways to feed and water our horses, or stable those horses. Their focus would have been more on the known opportunities, not so much the visionary side. Of course, lucky for us, Henry Ford had another idea, and his idea was pushing towards the automobile. But if he had only asked what their needs were, they may have limited some of their reactions to that question. And so when we can create this visionary experience for our customer, we may determine that we're able to, first of all, more easily meet their needs, or we can meet their needs in something new, something innovative, something that long-term will help make everyone much more productive. So once we have determined the needs, we have to consider how will we meet those needs. And we need to spring into action quickly. Today, timing is always of the essence. And so we will need to consider what needs we've discovered and how we're going to spring into action to meet those needs. The next component of this is the fourth item or the fourth step. How do we make that moment memorable? And of course, it ties directly or very closely into how do we meet those needs. When we try to consider how to make the moment memorable, we may have to ask ourselves, how can we wow this customer? How can we create a situation or an experience that's above and beyond what they may expect? Often in workshops, I'll talk to people about creating this wow kind of experience, and I may ask them to take a moment and think about a time when they received service that was above and beyond their expectations and really made them feel good and made them feel happy about that transaction or that experience. And a lot of times I see the participants in those workshops thinking deeply for a few moments. It's sometimes hard for them to think of this experience. But if I ask the opposite, When was a time when you were disappointed, frustrated, angry, or upset? Often those people can spring into action to jot something down a little bit more quickly. So it's important for us to remember that the focus that we want to have in our workplace, with other people, with our workplace teams, is that positive focus, that positive reflection, and trying to avoid reliving the past negative experiences that we've had. And so as we approach our interactions with coworkers, when we're considering how do we treat coworkers as customers, it's important that in every one of the transactions or interactions that we have, that we're always striving to truly make that moment memorable. Of course, we may feel some frustration about that thought, thinking, how can I go the extra mile each and every time? Well, we may not always have a great opportunity to make that moment memorable, but when we're always pushing towards that end result, when we're conscious of the idea of how do we do that, and we're looking for ways to do that, we're going to have a lot more of those occurrences than compared with activity where we're not pushing towards making that moment memorable. So consider, how do we meet those needs and how do we make that moment memorable? The final two steps or pieces of this is, how do we check the results and how do we leave the door open? So when we're considering treating coworkers as customers, checking the results is typically fairly simple. We may ask about the nature of the interaction. We may ask if we've met their needs, exceeded their needs, perhaps made that moment memorable. But we have to be sure that we're checking in on those results and asking those questions. Some of this sometimes is based on the feeling of how that transaction has been going. If it feels like it's going well, it probably has went well, but it's also important for us to verbally check in. In a lot of cases, in external customer service situations, we may also ask those kinds of questions. We may also do things like provide a survey for them or have some kind of an online interaction for them to fill out later. This is becoming more and more popular, where when we visit a retail environment and we leave with our receipt, they're often noting to us that there's a website link on that receipt, and if we could please go give them a kind favorable comment on their customer service experience or tell them about our experience today. The same kind of concepts apply for us internally in the workplace. And we may not go to the level of building a website for them to evaluate our experience, but we do need to make sure we include this step. We're checking in on those results. And then the final step is, how do we leave that door open? We want to create an environment that gives them the opportunity to come back to us again and again. Of course, we don't want to become an inappropriate crutch for our coworkers, where they're coming up short on their job tasks or job duties and expecting us to pick up the pieces. But we also want to be sure that they recognize that that door is open for them to ask more questions or to get more help if they need it. If we fail to appropriately leave the door open internally, we may run into quality issues with products or services. We could even run into safety issues. Someone may see something and be hesitant to approach us about it, and then ultimately, as a result, some safety concern happens. Somebody trips or slips, or something perhaps even worse than that. So it's important for us, both internal and external, to always be conscious of how will we leave that door open at the end of the transaction. We may simply say, if you have any other questions, please come back and see me. Or if I can help you with it as you move into the next step, please give me a call or send me an email. Anything that invites more future interaction, all in the spirit of creating a great internal coworker to coworker customer service environment. We've covered so much in today's short segment, but there's still so much more. Let's take a few minutes to review what we've discussed during this segment. We started off with the idea of what are the fundamentals of a good customer service transaction. And we explored what I sometimes refer to as the ABCs of customer service. And that is the concept of what customers want, compared with what customers actually get or receive, equals the customer's opinion of service quality. Very basic, very elementary, very fundamental, sometimes so simple that we forget about this basic equation of customer service. Next, we talked about the 4 possible outcomes that we can have from a customer service interaction. We talked about the idea of receiving a desired level of service, where what you want is what you get. We talked about the idea of acceptable levels of customer service, where what you get is what you'll take. And we talked about the idea of rejected service. And if we have rejected service, what we typically have is a complaint. What we really want to strive for are exceptional levels of customer service or customer interactions. And we want to think about, how do we go the extra mile? How do we provide something that's beyond what their initial expectations are? Something in their mind or their feelings that is truly something very great. So we have those 4 possible transactions or outcomes from transactions. Next, we talked about the idea of, how do we establish this good customer service? What are the steps or factors involved? And we talked about 6. The first one is providing a warm, friendly greeting. So in face-to-face interactions, that is a smile, a handshake, perhaps a few kind words, really being warm and welcoming. Next, we have to determine their needs. And remember that we can't necessarily just ask, what are your needs today, or how can I help you? While those may be great questions, they often don't dig deep enough. So we have to help sometimes create that visionary experience, or encourage them to look beyond their current framework in order to truly meet their needs. There may be some innovation involved, or some new process that helps take them to a higher level. Once we've determined what their needs are, we have to meet those needs. We have to spring into action. Timeliness today is very important. So we have to be timely, and we have to be always courteous and respectful as we work hard to meet those needs. The 4th step, or the 4th factor, is, how do we make that moment memorable? How do we truly wow this customer? How do we truly make this interaction or this transaction stand out, be something greater than they've had in the past? 5th, we have to check the results of that interaction. Of course, we can consider asking them, did we meet all of your needs today? Have I fulfilled or answered all of your questions? What other questions may you have? Things like that, of course, are helpful in our internal coworker to coworker interactions to check to see if we've truly met their needs. And the sixth and final piece is, how do we leave that door open? That's always critical in our internal situations with coworkers, leaving that door open for future questions, future problems that may need addressed. Of course, we don't want to become a crutch, an inappropriate crutch for that employee, but we do need to be sure to leave the door open. Otherwise, we could run into quality issues or even safety concerns. So once we've processed through those 6 steps, warm greetings, determining needs, meeting needs, making the moment memorable, checking the results, and leaving the door open, hopefully we've created an environment of exceptional customer service. And our focus on this segment was the idea of, how do we treat coworkers as customers? Because so often the representation of the external customer is fully ingrained in our mind, in our attitudes, and in the way that we act in our workplace environment. But if we truly want to have a very high performance team, we have to think about treating each other with that same level of courtesy and respect. So be sure that you're treating your coworkers as customers. Thanks so much for watching today. I hope that this segment has sparked some new ideas on how you can better interact in your workplace to make a difference for your organization or team. So let's end with a closing quote. Setbacks aren't a sign that it is over, give in, or give up. They are a sign that it's time to refresh, regroup, and give it all you've got.